Does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain.
Okay, President Trump over the weekend not ruling out the possibility of boots on the ground in Venezuela, as we've been discussing here. Joining us now, Democratic member of the Homeland Security Committee, Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona. He is a combat veteran of the war in Iraq. Also with us, President of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. The Eurasia Group has released its annual top risks report for the upcoming year.
We'll get to that in a second. But Senator, first, tell us about your journey here.
I mean, I was actually on vacation with my family in Puerto Rico when everything went south. And was delayed on all my planes to get here, and I landed about 5:30 a.m. this morning and came here. So
morning, Joe time.
I'm going to make it through this for sure. But after that, I can't guarantee it.
We appreciate it.
Now, how did you even get on a flight?
Now, we've been talking obviously about great news that Maduro's out of power.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talking about the concerns. Does this look like Iraq? Does this look like Afghanistan? You brought up a third option. Now, of course, this is assuming things go badly. Things go sideways. You said it wouldn't look like Iraq or Afghanistan.
I don't think so, because the dynamics are different. The Venezuelans are the same religion. You have people that have grown up together. They have the elite classes, whether they're elite socialists or elite capitalists. They're all kind of in the same environment. But it looks more, if things go bad, it could look more like Somalia in the early 90s, where you have a lot of warlords that have weapons and they're making money. And they want to continue making money. And at some point, if we end up putting boots on the ground, you could have the same scenario that occurred, obviously, unfortunately, in Somalia.
That would be
And this is the problem why they didn't think everything through. And all the messaging that's coming back and forth from the administration does not inspire any type of confidence here, because there doesn't seem to be a game day 2 plan. It's just like step 1, and then after that, I think they're just playing it, by ear at this point.
Right now, there doesn't seem to be a consistency in the message moving forward. Ian Bremmer, though, you say for now it's good keeping the Venezuelan military in place.
Absolutely. And while I agree with Ruben that there are all sorts of serious downside scenarios that do not involve Venezuelan civil war and breaking down and fragmentation, reality is the United States has just engaged in a very dramatic military act, unilaterally, without any of its allies, with any coordination. And I think in the near term, the more likely outcome is that, yes, massive amount of influence that the United States has militarily will get Delcy Rodriguez to work more closely with the U.S. administration. The risk is about the region. The risk is about the world. The risk is that an empowered U.S. president who's been constrained on the economic front. Things aren't going so well there. Not with the Chinese. That's TACO. That's not FAFO with Beijing. But there are a lot other places in the Western Hemisphere that feel like FAFO to Trump.
Wow.
And if you're Colombia, if you're Mexico, if you're Denmark, if you're the Europeans writ large, this is a very problematic message. The fact that President Trump has now himself actually latched on to the Donroe Doctrine,
that's dangerous.
That's his thing. Yeah. So now, because that's his brand, he now has to find other things that fit in and support that brand. And that is a deeply, deeply problematic reality for allies of the United States that are vulnerable.
The problem, though, is that nothing's going to change in terms of what people are actually caring about and voting about. What they care about right now is the cost of living, being able to buy a home, being able to, new college grads right now aren't getting jobs.
Healthcare.
And healthcare is going up. So the president's polling is not going to go up. So the only thing he's going to do, to back up what Ian said, he's going to look where he could find victories to make him feel better and hopefully move the poll numbers. And the easiest place he could find them is to use the military for some of these, I would say, dangerous situations and missions, and potentially put our men and women in danger.
So, Senator, as noted, no one's going to miss Maduro, but share your concerns about this operation, the legality of it, and the fact that Congress not notified, and what could come next.
Well, first of all, it was total BS. Secretary of State Rubio came to the Senate and said, we will not be doing any type of regime change. Lied to every senator, 100 senators in that room, and said there will be no regime change.
When?
What's that?
When did he say that?
He said that probably 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, okay.
And, now we're going back and forth. Now he's coming with this little, sleight of hand saying, well, it wasn't that. Now, at the end of the day, when people are shooting, that is war. When you're engaging in the power of the United States military, that is war. You need to get permission from us. And part of the permission structure is important because we would have asked, so what is the day after plan? Mm-hmm. And maybe we wouldn't be in a situation right now where we're all wondering what the hell is going to happen in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, whether Marco Rubio's right or whether the president's right, whether this is a police operation or whether the president says we're going to be running everything.
We don't know. We don't know what it's going to be.
Well, probably.
Right now, we just don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
The question I have is, when it comes to the United States Senate, if it comes to the United States Senate, the vote on whether American troops will be used to protect American oil companies put into Venezuela.
I mean, absolutely not. I lived this in 2005. The American public doesn't want this. The American public does not want their boys and girls from Florida, from Nebraska, from Arizona to go fight for big oil. That's not what this last election was about. How is that going to bring the cost of living down? How is that going to help me buy a house? How is that going to help my kid that just graduated college get a job? All it's going to do is help the shareholders of big oil, but it's going to end up putting a bullet in the ass of the kid, from Ohio. That's not a good way.
Ruben's right. Playbook, of course, is exactly what they just did with Ukraine. They had a lot of leverage over the Ukrainians. They shut down the defense support. They shut down intelligence until Zelensky was prepared to say, I'm going to promise you all of these critical minerals. I'm going to sign away the wealth so that you don't have to pay for it. And then Trump gets to say, look, what we're doing, the Americans aren't paying for anything. And that's what he's already saying on Venezuela. Oh, don't worry if we have to spend a lot of money to invest in the reconstruction because we're going to get all the oil wealth. That is the playbook. And it's state capitalism. It's not the free market. It's that Washington wants to have more influence over the companies. They want to have more influence over the outcomes, more influence over the capital flows in a global environment where, there are a lot of voters and there are also a lot of allies that aren't really simpatico with this plan.
Right. So let's now look at Eurasia Group's 2026 top risks report. How does what happened over the weekend enhance some of the risks you have listed here?
Well, it's a big concern for the Europeans who need rule of law. Right. They need coordination. Order. They need, the Americans to act as their security umbrella. That looks a lot weaker. And you saw the Europeans over the weekend basically not willing to condemn the U.S., even though they feel privately this is completely illegal, because they're so asymmetrically weak. Right. It is good for the Chinese because the Chinese feel like they like the law of the jungle playbook. Right? Long term, China has a leader that the Communist Party listens to him. Xi Jinping thought. Right? He doesn't have checks and balances in terms of a judicial system. And there isn't, there's no red, white, and blue book. There's no Donald Trump book and Donald Trump thinking in 2029 and 2030. That's a problem.
Can I ask you, Ian, you talked about how weak Europe was. Yeah. Are they moving to fix that? We've heard over the past several years, they understand they depend too much on the United States. Angela Merkel warned the EU when she was still in power. We've got to stop depending on the United States. Are they getting any closer to building a military that would put them in a stronger position?
Absolutely. But they're not doing it collectively. They're doing it individually. The EU is having a hard time being stronger because a lot of these countries don't feel the same urgency that the frontline states dealing with the Russians do, the Finns or the Poles, the Baltics. Of course, the Germans are doing a lot more in this environment. They have the Mario Draghi competitiveness report. They're moving towards trying to take away some of the stultifying red tape that has limited their ability to grow and be entrepreneurial and be productive. But is it fast enough? Absolutely not.
Well, this is where the United States can actually be a leader in this and saying, we need you to work together to create a true idea of integrated defense. And when we do that, they listen. One of the things I started when I was in the House of Representatives was called the Baltic Security Initiative. And I emphasized to our Baltic partners, our NATO partners, that you had to have an integrated defense program, policy, how you're going to defend yourself, how you're going to do it in a joint manner. And just those 3 states in less than 6 years have totally turned that around. If you have the United States being the leader, if you want to actually detach from Europe, you actually should show them how to do it. But the problem right now is that they don't know how to treat us. They don't know because they don't know what Donald Trump is thinking and what his motivations are anymore. So he throws off everything.
You know, Jonathan, I do think people are going to look back and ask how we could take our eye off the ball of the greatest risk, the greatest threat, which is China. We all talk about Russia when China is such a grave threat on so many fronts. We talk about Gaza, redeveloping Gaza when China is such a grave threat. We talk now about Venezuela, the Panama Canal, Greenland, when China is such a grave threat. In every way. I mean, this is a bipolar world again, and yet we're being distracted by everybody but the 800-pound, elephant that's in the room.
Yeah, and they've been happy to step into places in the world where the U.S. has withdrawn, like whether it's Africa and other parts of Asia. So, Ian, so talk to us more about this, because this is, there are a lot of things at play here, as Joe said, but the rivalry, President Biden would say it all the time. He said this century is going to be defined by the U.S. versus China. It seems like right now, though, the Trump administration is willing to let China have free rein.
Sure. I mean, if the Don Roe doctrine is the focus, and that is we're going to make sure that we control things in our hemisphere, that makes very clear to the Chinese, not as important. When the Japanese go out and say, look, we're going to defend Taiwan if there's an attack, and then the American president doesn't say anything in response, calls her privately, says, you should calm it down. When the American president says, well, look, the Chinese, U.S., that's a G2. Right? It's not a G7, a G20, it's a G2. And the Chinese don't actually accept that, but privately they love it because it means that they're being given that sense of equality because they're the ones that hit the Americans back so hard. They had the critical mineral supply chain that the Americans couldn't be bothered to build up over the last 20 years. They're building electricity, the 21st century economy, focusing on electrons. The U.S. doing molecules. We've got 13.5 million barrels a day. We'll get more with the influence over Venezuela, but that's not energy price that's coming down. That's not a 21st century energy that's going to power AI. That's 20th century energy. And the Americans need to do all of those things. The Chinese are laughing to the bank. They can't believe how fortunate they are that they've been able to stand down, stare back at the Americans and stand them down while American allies are all feeling so incredibly vulnerable.
Right?
They've been able to stand down and stare down Donald Trump.
Yes.
There has been an understanding from Democrats and Republicans for years that we have to deal with the China problem. The problem is Donald Trump is a coward. And when he meets somebody of equal power, he backs down. He knows that he does not have an easy bully in China, so he just keeps backing down and tries to find other wins. And who is, at the end, the victim? The United States, the world order, soybean farmers, whatever it is, all because Donald Trump does not know how to deal with men in power of equal stature with him. He could only go after little bully states.
Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, thank you very much for joining us in the studio, fresh off a flight from Puerto Rico.
We appreciate it.
Ian Bremmer, thank you as well. The full report on the top risks in 2026 is available online right now at eurasiagroup.net.